At this point, you should have a really good idea of how to tell a compelling, impactful, real story, and that's what we're going for. The way I like to look at the behavioral interview is that thousands of people are interviewing and applying for this position. They're only going to take tens, 10, 30, 40. Why are you one of those? Every single one of these people either majored in computer science, did a project. Why are you unique and special? One of the things you can use to do that is just telling really great stories to help you stand out. This is what I love to do to really stand out in my interviews and bring my stories to life. This is the example. After sophomore year of college, I ended up getting sick after I was traveling through Asia, and my friend Kenny and I decided that we were going to try our hands at a Kickstarter campaign. I go on Kickstarter and I looked at all the products that do really well, and I noticed a trend that wallets do incredibly well on Kickstarter, especially very unique niche wallets. Kenny and I decided that we were going to launch a Kickstarter for wallets. We do some brainstorming, and within 24 hours, we come up with the next great thing: boys' wallets. We came up with this idea, and it was a wallet with a bottle opener, and our slogan was "Crack a cold one open with the boys." And what ended up happening was, through marketing efforts, launching the product, getting a few samples, we only ended up raising $5,000 out of our $10,000 goal in Kickstarter. I made the decision, axed the project. We didn't think there was enough demand, tried something new, we failed, it didn't work out. At this point in the story, during my interview, I reach into my pocket and I pull out my boy's wallet. And I show my interviewer the wallet, I hand it to them, and I tell them all the different things that I wish I had done with marketing and I wish I had done in terms of product changes, like making the bottle opener a little bit less noticeable. But I bring the story to life. As soon as I hand them my wallet, they now know that, one, it's completely true. I've now genuinely connected with them with this wallet, and their face just lifts up. If I really want to do it, really want to pull it, I tell them that I carry around the wallet with me all the time when it actually has like cards and stuff. I tell them I carry around the wallet as a reminder of my failure on that project and to encourage me to keep pushing me forward. And the interviewer always loves to hear that. But again, it's really just being unique, right? And I use my wallet for that uniqueness, and I fill it with cards and I hand it to my interviewer, and that's how I bring the story to life. I also did this with wireless headphones that I was selling online at one point, and I gave this advice to someone who had a nonprofit where they would make keychains out of fish hooks and sell those. He now carries one of those keychains around on his keys all the time so he can show it to his interviewer. Bringing those things to life and doing those things that go above and beyond is really going to make you have amazing interviews. Now that we've talked about executing on these interviews and telling really great stories, I want to talk about how to build chemistry. And there's really two ways that I do this. The first one is people like people who like themselves. So developing a connection with people really helps you bond. Imagine when you meet someone new and you both share the same love for a book, a sport, anything. You bond with them. You like that person. You gravitate towards them. This is what you want to try to do with your interview. And I talk about this in the resume section with your About Me, but anytime you can really do it. So what I typically do is I'll go on LinkedIn and I stalk my recruiter, my interviewer, anyone that I'll be interacting with ahead of time, and I find out their interests. I go on their LinkedIn, their social medias, everything, and I find out what they like and where else they've worked. An example of this, two examples of this that I think are impactful is when I was interviewing with Juicero, I found out the head of marketing who I was interviewing with had gone on a ski trip the week before, and her previous job was at a venture capital firm. I spent my summer internship at a venture capital firm, and I was a competitive snowboarder. So I really made sure to emphasize and bring up those 2 points in my interview. And she immediately went, "Oh, I actually went on a ski trip last week." And we just talked about snowboarding for 5 or 10 minutes. And those are the type of things you want to do. Another example of I walk into my Microsoft interview and I look at my interviewer, and she's very tall, very skinny. And I immediately just think, there's no way this woman isn't a long distance runner. Like, she, at some point in her life, was a long distance runner. So she asked me, she's like, "Oh, how are you doing today?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm still a bit sore. I actually ran my first marathon last weekend." And she's like, "Really? I love running marathons. I've done a bunch of them." We proceeded to talk about marathon running for 10 to 15 minutes, and the rest of the interview was a breeze. Same with the Juicero one, a breeze, because we developed that connection. We like each other, and it's super easy. I've had 2 interviews when I was recruiting where I met other Eagle Scouts, and we talked about our Eagle Scout projects and high adventure bases we went to, and in both those processes, those interviewers specifically looked out for me the rest of the time. So whenever you can develop those connections with people, it's really, really fantastic. Definitely try to make it more organic. Don't force it. Just think of ways that you could bring it up. Like, make sure it makes sense. Don't just be like, oh, like I stalked you on Facebook and I saw this. That's super creepy and weird. You need to do it without them knowing. And that's just a skill that you need to practice. The next one is, again, I've talked about people like and are attracted to people who are similar to themselves. And this also comes with body language and the way you speak. You really want to match your interviewer in intonation, speaking pace, body language. If your interviewer is pretty monotone, speaks very slow, sits in a very small position, crouched, arms crossed, and you're talking really loud, hands all over the place, and you're just like super excited, you are going to overwhelm them. And regardless of how well the interview goes in terms of content, because there's such a mismatch in chemistry, it's not going to go well. And I noticed this doing a lot of mock interviews where I would interview people, I'd come in a great mood, be really energetic, be excited, and I'm playing the role of the interviewer, and the person I'm interviewing is very serious, monotoned, speaking in the same way the entire time, and they're just not picking up. And I'm just thinking like, wow, this dude's boring. Like, you want to just be similar. Don't do it creepily where their legs are crossed and you're sitting with your legs crossed. You don't want to do that, but you want to do it in a natural way where that if they're speaking very slow and they're a bit monotone, then speak slower and be monotone. And you want to have that self-awareness to understand how you can be similar to them. It doesn't need to be perfect or identical. It's just keeping in mind that if you're very different in the way you're speaking and the way you're acting, you're probably not going to get it simply because the person's just not going to develop a chemistry with you. Awesome. Now that we've covered how to prepare and how to execute on your stories, we're going to go and I'm going to walk you through a few examples of behavioral interview stories that I tell.